He said anything. So there's a reason why I said that. Tonight they're playing the New York, or I should say the Boston Red Sox, and they're going to lose tonight to the Boston Red Sox. And the Red Sox will outright win the division because of that tonight. So thank you for having me here this evening, watching that nonsense. All right, so onward and upward. You did get, the board report. It's in your documents there. I did share with you 2 links. The first link is our blog, the principal's blog. This is a good way for you to keep up. I only get to come here every 6 months and talk to you as a board. If ever you have any questions about what's going on, or if you want to come out to any event, I encourage you to go on here. This obviously is on the Watton Creek website under administration. When you follow the link, there's just a welcome from me, and then our blog is available there. It's updated at about 9 o'clock every Friday morning. It goes out with a Blackboard Connect blast to our families. The question is always, do people read it? And the cool thing is you can see the metrics behind this, and on a weekly basis it gets 700 hits as soon as this comes out. So people look at this. As you know, Watton is a green school, and so part of that is reducing the amount of paper that's going out. And literally every day we could be sending home flyers and those types of things to our parents. Many times, as a father myself, you know what happens with that paper. It goes in the garbage, hardly read. So this is a way that we use to reduce the amount of paper that is going home as well. We try to catch as much. Still, paperwork is going home, don't get me wrong, but when it comes to the flyers like the music notes that went out this past week, a hat day for Caden and those types of things, that's going home electronically rather than paper-based these days. So again, just check it out, and again, you're always welcome to attend any event happening. You see some of the things that we have done in the last couple of weeks, which seems to have gone by really, really fast. I'm happy to report that today was the first day for our Science Explorers Club. We had more than 30 students attend the first Science Explorers today, as well as our first Girls on the Run by 2 of our awesome teachers, Carol Moyer and actually a teaching assistant, Deb Gellert. So we're excited to get those off and running after school activities, keeping our kids engaged beyond the school day. So you see some of the what's next, what's happening. Caden Davis is a young man who came to us this year as a 3rd grader in Carol Moyer's class by coincidence. And he is a wonderful young man who has been diagnosed with leukemia. So they're working on a fundraiser. We're all wearing hats on Friday. Dr. Winters is coming over on Friday, so I invite you to wear a hat.
I will. Phillies. I'm starting.
I'll tell Andrea not to let you in. Okay. All right. Onward and upward. So that's really that. You can see what's happening next. The other link that I wanted to focus on tonight, before turning it on over, so you can get moving with your meeting, is what are we doing? So what's going on at Watton Creek? What structures have we put in place in my first, roughly 9 months at Watton Creek Elementary School? And we're really proud of the things that our faculty and staff have done. I've listened, but I've asked for a lot of help and a lot of change in getting some new structures in place. Based on the work of Dr. Bob Slavin and Dr. Nancy Matten, we've put together what we call the Solutions Network. The Solutions Network is a series of committees focused on, as you can see here, we have them listed out: our Leadership Council, our PLC, our Safety Council, Student Services and Special Education Roll Call. These are the main committees that we have, and they are each comprised of a representative group of teachers and other staff members. I'll highlight the Safety Committee, for instance. That is happening every month. We have teaching assistants as well as teachers. Our custodians, cafeteria workers are the representative group. And what we do is we're looking at, similar to what we do when we're looking at board policy, we're looking at what our routines and procedures are. We are beating them up, we are implementing them, and then regrouping and realizing what and talking about what we need to change when it comes to simple things like fire drills, as well as weather emergency drills, and all of those types of issues related to school safety. Our leadership council, one that started out with just problem-solving general issues of the school, and it's one that's shifting to more of a data-driven approach. So again, a representative group of teachers meeting at 8:20 at once a month, looking at school-wide data and making decisions based on that data, mostly academic. There's some other committee work there. One of the other things that I want to highlight is, you know, our partnerships with the support that we have at the elementary level that we're so lucky to have. One, under Dr. Miller's leadership is Mrs. Vicki Willier, who has really been nothing but supportive and patient with me coming in. She is the elementary, is special ed supervisor is her title, but we've spent time with each of our teachers on a monthly basis. Our special ed case managers, we go through each of our students by name, make sure that they're making the growth that we're expecting. If not, changing things up. I'd also like to highlight the work of Rose Belinsky and Julie Klein. They have been phenomenal, and again, being patient with me, catching me up with our curriculum and assessment instruction, but also in going that next step. Okay, so this is where we are, where are we going next? So with that, I turn it over to you if you have any questions.
Covered.
All right.
No way.
We had to know.
I'm curious.
Sir.
This is like really loud.
You don't have to talk into it.
I'm not usually that loud.
Right.
For the Safety Council, what kind of progress have you been making since I think you started that in, if I remember correctly, February or March? And I think you kind of talked about that a little bit to us when we were there for the town hall forum.
Yes.
What kind of progress have you guys been making? What kind of work was done over the summer, I guess by you primarily?
Yeah. Well, I can tell you, you know, our first meeting this year was kind of recapping where we have been, and this seems kind of silly and maybe a little bit ridiculous, but after we ran a fire drill, as you typically would at the very beginning of the school year this year, and we have new placards in every classroom that clearly delineates in writing what the evacuation route is, along with a map. And you know, you are here, this is where you go. And what we found was third grade came to the table. Joe Bertolette came to the table and said, you know what we found that we're actually evacuating to the fire lane. We've been doing this for years. Mm-hmm. And only then, on that September morning, did we realize we can't be evacuating here. Yeah. So those are the types of things that we are sort of identifying and problem solving. Again, we've done weather, the weather drill as well, which again, we completely revamped. We're lucky enough to have lots of alcoves and lots of internal places that we can be going to. So that actually took more time. It sounds simple, but it took a lot more time in identifying where all 589 students can go, and 100 faculty and staff. So that was one of those things. The emergency evacuation drill, that really right now is our focus for the beginning of this school year. So our relocation, if we cannot return to the building, where do we relocate? And of course, our next steps is the active shooter. We're all being trained as administrators in the beginning of October here. I've been trained in Alice before myself, but to be able to do that with my fellow administrators and then turn it over to our staff, that really is, that by the end of this year, those are our areas of focus as a safety committee. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
I'd like to come down to visit your school, but I was thinking maybe after the first report period, maybe things could be acclimated a little bit more and everybody be into the school thing, and maybe I could come to visit your school.
Absolutely. Because
I had done that when Susan was there, and I found it especially especially I visited some of the autistic support classes, and I found them extremely informative, and I was very appreciative, of going into see.
You came along with us to the pre-kindergarten classroom last year.
Yes,
as well.
how's the pre-K doing?
It's going great. We still have the same 2 teachers. They returned this year with the BCIU, and that's really been one of our focuses as well, as including them more as a part of our school. Simple things like picture day and those types of things, including them in the committee work that we have going on, and making them feel a part of our school community.
Because I'll tell you what, I wish we had a universal preschool statewide. It is such a great thing to get those kids acclimated and involved in school. And I was amazed at those children. I mean, some of them, third grade, could read, you know, could read. It was like unbelievable.
Yeah. And Susan Cook, my predecessor, deserves a ton of credit for bringing that on.
Yeah. Well, try to get the IU to give us some more. Thank you very much.
On your report, there are some like live links.
Yes.
Are those things that are just for the faculty, or is it?
Correct. So the link that you have, actually, thanks for pointing that out. But the actual link that you have, is our internal website. So, you know, as a former educator, as a continuing educator, you know that at the beginning of the year, many times a principal would hand over a big binder and say, here's your procedures manual, good luck. So instead of that, we've created a Google site. That was my main focus over the summer, as a matter of fact, which is our main hub of everything. And you can see the links. I gave you guys permission to actually get into the site and kick it around a little bit.
That's what, yeah, we couldn't get in, and I asked Jerry if we could get in here. So I didn't know if that was information that we were privy to have, or
yeah. What it is you don't, you know, there's no you know, confidential information that you have access to that I would, you know, that I would be concerned about. What you do have or should have, and I'll get you access to, is the site itself, so you can kind of see what it looks like. Every faculty and staff member has access to it, and it has simple things like calendars and schedules, contact information. Our master schedule is in there. The committee work and the agenda from these committees is there, so that we can keep up with those. You know, our PLC work and those types of things. It's all kind of a one-stop shop. Sometimes in education, it's okay, where am I going to find this? It's meant to be that one location for all of our faculty and staff to be able to access information.
So this might be more for administration, but you have, you're going to have a 15% increase of kids coming from kindergarten up into first grade next year. And I'm wondering if that presents any issue with staffing or teachers or classroom size. You know, your first grade class is small, but I'm wondering if we're also rebounding in attendance as well in some areas.
Well, as what we do every spring, we'll sit down with all the elementary principals, we'll look at numbers, and then we have what we've considered bubble classes. And those teachers will bump to the classes that are the grades that need it. There's a bubble bursting in fourth grade this year, correct? I believe at White Creek.
Correct. Right now we currently have 5 classes at each level.
So we would look at that and see if that bubble would be moved down to the first grade, and we'll make those assessments throughout the levels.
Actually, right now in third grade we have 124 students, 116 in fourth grade.
I guess I was just wondering, do we have a way to anticipate? Are there signups that would enable us, or through preschool or something, to anticipate their enrollment number coming into kindergarten for each?
We do have conversations with the preschools in the community to try and gauge that, but then they don't have to necessarily sign up. They can stay in preschool for another year. So those discussions do take place. We do start the early registration in March, so we do get a sense ahead of time. We don't make our decisions-ish July, but we start planning early on in the spring, and then we make a final determination where those bubble classes are in July.
Thank you.
Jeff, I had a question about the chronically truant on your data dashboard. The percentage here represent the current chronically truant since last year?
That was, what's available on there was still the same data that was presented at the March board meeting. Okay. In terms of that information, that hasn't been updated on the district's, or I should say the state's site as of yet.
Okay.
So that's still the
So
same.
this doesn't reflect activity
Correct.
between the beginning of the year and now?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Do you want to talk a little about the steps we've taken to try and mitigate that situation though?
Yes, one of the main things, one of the big, I think, breakthroughs that we have is that we're going to be accepting parent emails as an acceptable form of an excuse, which makes a ton of sense. A parent has to log in with their own credentials and their personal email address to be able to email us, obviously. I think that's going to go a long, long way to mitigating those numbers, not just at Owan, but in all of our schools.
We assume that we found that we're just not getting the notes. It's not a truancy issue. It's just between the student getting from here to there, or parents just being busy. So we're going to roll out the email possibility, and hopefully that will cut down on some of this.
And I think the word is getting out there now too. I mean, initially this was state law change, this was district policy change. It takes time for that to kind of roll out before people realize, oh wow, these are the things that are expected of us now.
Yeah, I think that's a really good move forward, because way too many times kids were being categorized as chronically truant, which puts you in some precarious situations, particularly with the local district magistrate if it becomes excessive. And that's unfair sometimes, because kids sometimes are not responsible to bring in that piece of paper. They don't bring it in within the required amount of time, the 3 days, let's say. And it could be avoided by a simple phone call or as you're pointing out, an email, which I think is a great idea.
And it sort of takes the eye off the prize when you're dealing with a whole, plethora of issues, instead of focusing on, the ones who really need the attention, or deserve the attention. Absolutely.
Thank you. Well, just another question. I noticed you have a lot of teams that are meeting regularly. Do you have leadership teams for kids? Are students engaged in any kind of opportunities to kind of interact with you, or in teams to kind of?
I love that. Jan Rothbart, who is one of our, who is our intervention specialist, she has a peer buddies or a peer tutoring group with 4th grade, tutoring other students through the intervention process. So kiddos that are struggling, they go and read together, build relationships, those types of things. Sort of a next step for our solutions network is just that. You often think of student council at a middle school or high school level, but I have run student council for 3rd and 4th graders in the past, and it is very interesting. The type of ideas, genuine ideas that you get from 3rd and 4th grade students. So that's sort of a next step for our solutions network, and a valid one as well.
Any other discussion, comment, questions? Thank you, Mr. Freese. Sounds like the school year is starting off really well at Owan, and we wish you continued luck this year. Thank you. Thanks for the presentation. Okay, we're going to move on our agenda. We've got 3 sets of minutes for approval this evening. A special board meeting, voting meeting from August 14th, a board workshop meeting on August 14th, and a board voting meeting minutes from August 21st. I move we approve all 3 sets of these minutes.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Treasurer's report. Mrs. Pasia.
I move the treasurer's report for 8/31/2018. That's the period ending. The following financial statements are attached. Year-to-date summary of revenue and expenditures, all funds. Statement of assets, liabilities, and balances. Payroll and fringe benefits summary. Investment statements, and student activity fund. I move these to be accepted.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Next section is board policy. Several policies are recommended for second reading. These have been reviewed for 2 months by our administrators, our board members, our solicitor. Items A through G are up for second reading. That means final approval. I don't think I necessarily have to go through all of these items. We've been discussing these for the past 2 months. Unless anybody would like to pull one out, I would like to suggest that we group them together, and I make a motion to approve for second reading policies A through G.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Policies H through M are first reading policies. These were discussed at our workshop meeting last week to some degree. I don't believe there was any additional feedback that we received from administration, board, or solicitor. Unless anyone has any objections, I would like to group these policies together and recommend that we approve policies H through M for first reading.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
I'm just curious, did we find a path forward on 312 related to, I think it originally had read something along the lines of the process of evaluation would be set up in an administrative regulation, and in the absence of doing that, what will be the process for establishing a review system?
My understanding is personnel was going to take that. Am I correct, Mr. Zucchini? DAR?
Sure.
I mean, I think
It could be us.
the process, I mean, if you look at policy, it basically says the process for developing the system of evaluating the superintendent, assistant superintendent is a cooperative effort between the superintendent's office and the board leadership. And we've done that in the past. I think we intend to do that again. I'm assuming there's an AR coming from PSBA on this, and hopefully that can be sent to the personnel committee. We can take a look through that. We haven't made any substantial changes to our evaluation protocol, in the past several years, and we've looked at a couple different models. I mean, we certainly can make changes, but again, I think we would put that in the hands of the personnel committee.
To make a recommendation.
Yeah.
I got the AR stuff.
Yeah. So as soon as we get that AR, we'll.
Who would that be coming from the PF?
Well, PSBA will have one, yeah. We have a list of the AR, so I'll get that and send it to the personnel committee.
Yeah. And I think one of the trickiest parts for us was that historically the superintendent has evaluated the assistant superintendent, but the law, the school code seems to indicate that the board, evaluates the assistant superintendent. So we're going to have to work out the logistics of that and try to figure out the best way. I think our sense is that it's still the best process for having the superintendent evaluate the assistant superintendent, but it then ultimately is our responsibility to take the superintendent's recommendation and then make that a board recommendation.
I guess related. Go ahead.
Sorry, no, go ahead.
No. I guess related to both of them, and we don't have to talk about it now because I understand that there's going to be more substantial discussions at the personnel committee level. But it strikes me as incorrect procedurally or governance-wise that what would specifically govern this process is something that's only controlled by the administration. And that's not this to the administration being incapable of doing this, but I think it's our role to directly set the process for how this goes about. And I think we should do that cooperatively with the administration. But if the actual substance of that procedure is contained within administrative regulation, which we don't have access to in the first place, I don't understand how that is a good process.
Well, I think we do have access to it. I mean, all the ARs should be available. They're just not approved by us. And this is one of those oddball ARs because, it really is something that we should be able to weigh in on and have some input on. Most other ARs are just kind of reiteration of policy and provide detail and specificity relative to the implementation of policy. This might be a little different. So I think we'll remain somewhat flexible with this thing.
But if I'm not wrong, we just discussed about the AR being sent to the personnel committee and it coming from there.
Yeah, I guess my my objection, or my thinking right now, and it doesn't have to be what I vote yes or no about or anything like that at this point, why in the body of school district policy is the procedure for evaluation by the board of the superintendent and the assistant superintendent contained in one that is written by the administration? Now, whether or not we're going to do it differently in this case, you know, I'm kind of favoring that this should either be contained within board policy or should be specified in the contract that we have with the superintendent and the assistant superintendent.
Well, again, I mean, school code outlines the process for how the evaluation process is to be done, and in fact, it's a negotiated process between the superintendent and the board president. Actually, I mean, if you read through the Pennsylvania school code on this, so I think we're following that for the most part. I mean, there's been opportunity for our superintendents to kind of weigh in on it, to kind of give us some feedback. You know, we're here to listen and work together. We've provided I've provided some proposals and alternatives based upon some information I received from other school districts. We've looked at that, you know, so it's a work in progress. I think our next evaluation would probably be in the spring. You know, and actually, I think it's just an annual evaluation. So, you know, we're looking at next June. So there's plenty of time between now and then to kind of take a look at the process and make sure we're feeling comfortable with it. I know we talked a little bit about. I know, Mike, you talked about some culture surveys, and you know, I think that might be a nice way to kind of enhance it. 360s, not sure about that. That may be a little bit too intense, but you know, I think the examination of school culture and being able to kind of, you know, use that as a way for us to kind of judge how, you know, the administration is performing, I think are valid.
And Dave, isn't this something that we can talk about at our retreat as well? Can this be an agenda item?
Sure.
You know, just to explore it further there. But I did have a question on the 8 categories, and I'm just interested from an administrator's perspective across the board. Are they fair categories to be judged on? And what I mean by that is that, you know, my experience in a healthcare setting, when I look at the performance of, say, a cardiothoracic surgeon, who may be very good at what they do, but they have, say, a high mortality rate. It ends up that surgeon has a high mortality rate because he or she ends up being sort of the doctor of last resort, the physician that is not afraid to operate on people who are critically ill, who have comorbidities and have problems, and therefore are, you know, Sharon, you would know this as a former nurse, that you have really, really sick people who, you can have somebody come in for open heart surgery who's perfectly healthy except for that, say, valve issue, versus somebody who has tons of other comorbidities and might not do as well on an operating room table. And that procedure, the thing you're going to have to do, it might be the only thing that saves their life, but they're at a higher risk for surgery. So my point is that in some of these studies, like, you know, Keystone exams as an example or whatever, I don't know these things, but do you feel as if your performance should be solely tied to these mechanisms because you don't necessarily have control of what's coming to you?
And I think that's a fair discussion for the retreat. We can go through each category. So I'll make sure we all have copies and we can have that discussion.
Yeah, I think that, you know, when you look at the hyperlink that's associated with that, it takes you right back to the school code, and it lists every one of those as areas that, as objective performance standards that may be used as the basis for the evaluation. So, I mean, there are suggestions, and if we as a district come up with other criteria, and I think we do have additional criteria in our evaluation document, you know, that's up to us. So, you know, we should use these as a starting point maybe, and go from there.
I know on the evaluation instrument, as well as I'm looking at the one that, you know, Dr. Phillips and I have to use, the broad categories that are outlined by the state are equally applicable to superintendent and assistant superintendent. Where you see some nuanced difference is in some of the like bullet points or subcomponents, like the one that I think talks about like community relations, like one of them talks about building relationships with local politicians. Well, you know, that more directly is going to apply to a superintendent's role than it likely is an assistant superintendent's role because of the nature of the position. But community relations is important for both of us, but what it looks like for each of us may be slightly nuanced, you know, differently, but it's more teased out in the subcomponents, but the broad categories are all broad leadership categories that I would argue are, you know, applicable for both positions.
Thank you.
Mike, were you ultimately asking if Dr. Phillips thought there should be fewer criteria or maybe even more criteria?
You know, I think I was reflecting more on, you know, when you have a goal when you have a goal or an objective at work, if you're going to be judged on that performance, you'd like to have the ability to have as much impact and as much ability to affect the outcome is what I'm saying. And you know, so my question is, part of my question is, you know, as the superintendent, you know, or as the assistant superintendent, are you comfortable being held for, you know, some of these things over? I mean, for instance, you know, let's say attrition rates. I mean, I would question what is your ability truly to affect attrition as an example. I mean, there could be a million reasons for attrition, none of which you could do anything about.
And I think as Dr. Hemmerger said, those are things we can discuss. Those are something we can pick and choose.
Okay.
Yeah, this is a first reading on this, so any additional discussion and comments, suggestions that you might have in the process, this is still up for consideration and review, will be on our board agenda for final approval in October.
I'm wondering, is this something that we need to act on now or after we are able to have a more substantial discussion about what we want the evaluation to be with Bob and Patrick about that? Because I feel like we're talking about some different avenues that we want to explore for the future about how to change this. And I don't actually see anything in this policy now that I reread it that reflects that anything's going to be done per an administrative regulation. And I'm wondering, the different areas of evaluation that are listed on policy 312 that's currently active are different than these ones that are now listed here. And I'm also wondering if we're limiting ourselves to these 8, because there isn't another provision that says something along the lines of may include the following or any other that are mutually agreed upon too. So I have a feeling that this is probably going to change a lot from today to October, especially considering the discussion we may have at the board retreat. So is this something that may be better to wait off until that?
You know, one of the things that I'm always trying to be sensitive to is that when policy and the policies that PSBA sends us have a reference to school code, and this is directly out of school code. You know, I feel less inclined to kind of make some of those changes. I mean, the other thing too is here, this is broad enough. I mean, this has a lot of mays and there's a lot of opportunity for making adjustments and changes. I mean, this is a mutually agreed upon performance standard process where additional criteria can be negotiated or worked out between mutual agreement between the board and the superintendent. So I don't see that there's anything inconsistent with what we're doing, what we're planning on doing, and this policy at this point right now. You know, I'm personally comfortable with it. I don't think it stands in our way. It's not going to limit us in terms of making any kind of changes that we want to the evaluation. These standards here can be used or they can be totally ignored. You know, the criteria that are established. The one thing I would say is that, I mean, we should be a little bit better about making sure that these are posted on our website, that our community knows what the, what these agreed upon criteria are for evaluation, and that's included here in this policy.
And I would just say that one other thing that we've had some conversation on is that we want to be fair about integrating anything into an evaluation process that it's fully disclosed to the leadership ahead of time, and it sort of starts at the beginning of a review year, so that you're not hitting somebody with something that you didn't know that was part of your thing that you were being evaluated on. That just wouldn't be fair. So that's, I think, part of the process too, is to make sure that whatever we have a conversation and we don't by edict, lay something out, but that we also, give that person who's going to be held responsible for that the time to actually, and the opportunity to, be in comportment with that, whatever it is.
I think too, at our retreat coming up, we're going to hear from Dr. Winters, Dr. Phillips about their annual goals for 18-19, and that'll be an important part of the evaluation process as well, and it has been in the past. We've always incorporated the goals into the evaluation document. Probably one of the more relevant areas, I think, for evaluation. Okay, this is first reading. Does anybody have any other comments or discussion? I'd like to, unless Hunter, you want to pull this one out and vote separately, I'd like to recommend.
I think that there's just enough room for this to evolve, especially because it's on first reading. And I didn't catch number 8 that you had referred to.
Okay.
But there's also no reference here to an administrative regulation, which was there originally, I recall. So I wonder if that's something that we need to add as an amendment or something along those lines.
Yeah, and it also talks about the employment contract, including, the objective performance criteria. So, that's something that we only do periodically. You just can't change an employment contract unless, I guess, you addend it, I suppose, or you can make some modifications to it by mutual agreement. But, yeah, you're right. There's no AR that's here, but I think it makes sense to see what PSBA has.
And I recall that there was reference originally when I first read through 312, because that's what brought up the discussion at, I guess it was, I think it was the workshop meeting this past week.
Yeah. Okay, any further discussion? So we're back to, I think we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on approving policies H through M for first reading? Okay, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries. Okay, we're going to move on to business functions with Mr. Hill.
Thank you, Dr. Henberger.
Sir.
Number 1, responding to violent intruder instructor training. It's recommended the Board of School Directors approves a contract with Lancaster 11 and IU 13 to provide responding to violent intruder instructor training to select district staff on October 8, 2018. Cost of the training is being paid for out of 2017-18 Title II funds.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Agreement with PA Career Link of Berks County. It's recommended the Board of School Directors approves a contract with Exeter Township School District and PA Career Link of Berks County to provide custodial services at no extra cost to the district.
Second.
Any discussion?
Let me amend that to say at no cost, not extra.
So is there going to be any supervision by any of our own staff of these people that are coming here?
Yes.
I think that's required and it's written up in the contract.
It is.
Okay, great.
And I think as I read the contract, we can require any additional clearances over and beyond what they had listed in the contract. So I'm assuming that we would, utilize the same types of
They were added, I added them.
I would agree with that.
I added them.
Good. Any additional discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries.
It's recommended the Board of School Directors approves a fund transfer of $1,250,000 from the general fund to the Capital Reserve Fund 32 for the period ending June 30th, 2018, and the necessary budget transfers among general fund accounts to support the capital project fund transfer.
Second.
Any discussion?
And one question I forgot to ask last night at the business committee. What does it cost for us to do transfers? Not that it affects anything, I'm just wondering.
It doesn't cost anything.
There's no,
It's an inter-transfer.
okay,
Right, to move from different accounts, it costs us nothing.
okay. I didn't know if there was some exclusion that you get charged after you do so many of them. I mean, I don't know the way that financing happens.
Yeah, no charge.
I just have a quick question. When you make these transfers, must a certain number of board members vote for those transfers, or is it just a simple majority?
A simple majority.
Just a simple majority?
We're not voting on the budget.
Okay, I just was wondering.
Okay.
Any additional discussion? Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. And that's all for business functions. Thank you, Mr. Bell.
You're welcome.
So we're going to move on to Personnel Committee with Mr. Drapina.
It is recommended that the Board of School Directors approves or ratifies the following resignations: certificated staff, support staff, extracurricular staff, certificated substitutes, and support substitutes.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries.
It is recommended that the Board of School Directors approves or ratifies the following retirements: support staff Ronnie G. Gilbert, full-time custodian at the senior high.
Second. Discussion.
If we vote no, is he coming back?
I don't think so.
Okay.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
I'm going to turn this one over to Pat.
Your favorite.
Appointments. It is recommended that the Board of School Directors approves or ratifies the following appointments: administrative staff, support staff, extracurricular staff, certificated substitutes, support substitutes, and guest teachers.
I request that we remove the guest teachers from the motion. Wait, I did that wrong. I would move that we would approve what was read except for the guest teachers.
What change of material are
Do we need a second?
Yeah, so you need a second on
Okay,
mine.
we have a second on that?
there?
We have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so we're going to approve this particular section, every area with the exception of guest teachers. Is that correct?
Well, we just need to approve the guest teachers.
I don't
Yes, that's
think-
what he said.
Okay.
Oh,
I don't think we approved the first section yet. We just approved your amendment.
Well, mine wasn't, my motion was for administrative through support, not guest teachers. So now we would vote on a well, nobody made a motion for the guest teachers, but I'll motion that we approve the guest teachers as.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the guest teachers.
I think he's violating parliamentary procedure.
Is there a second? We have a second. Any discussion?
Yes, this objection usually comes from Mr. Pacha, and I don't understand why. Can you tell me why?
Yes, I can tell you why. There's a difference between certificated staff, like which we just approved, and guest teachers. If you look down at the guest teachers, you see we have someone that has a BS in, I don't know, BSW, I don't know what the W stands for.
Social work.
Social work. I said the social work. Then there's another one with social work. Then there's one that has a BA in social studies. And then there's one that has a business administration management. And I don't understand why the person with BS in primary education,
They may have not
they
sat
didn't get
for the
their,
test.
they didn't
Probably
get
need their
their,
practice.
that's what I thought. So, why I am against these guest teachers is, first of all, they can be placed anywhere, I think, from kindergarten to 12th grade. Can't they be placed anywhere like that? Right. And I myself, as a teacher who is certified, I had to, when I was teaching, we had to go into the classroom earlier on in our experience, maybe when I was a freshman, to see how classes were going, you know, with the teacher. At that time, when I went to Kutztown, they had lab school, and so we as students could go there and see the teachers working with the students. And then when you got to be a senior, you got to have a half a year of going with for student teaching. So you went with a master teacher in one of the schools. I'm sure here in Exeter we have people that, you know, work with student teachers that work with a master teacher. And so then they then have a lot of you know, first-hand experience with students. Where these guest teachers, they go to the IU, I think it's 2 days, they throw it all at them and they say, you can go and teach anywhere from kindergarten to 12th grade. I really don't think that's the case, and I think a lot of times, I know a friend of mine teaches, and she's not certified to teach high school, but she goes up there like as a guest teacher, and she says, you know, all I do is tell them, here's what the teacher gave you, go do it, and that's it. So there's really not much education going on when you have these guest teachers. So that's why I feel that I have to say no.
Do you feel it's degrading to your profession?
Yes, because I worked hard for my degree, and I was involved in you know, working with students quite a bit before I went out to became a real, you know, became a teacher that was an instructional one teacher. And then you have 3 years, yeah, I guess, is it 3 years or 6 years?
Right, to get
3 years
level two.
to get your level 2, and then I guess 6 years if you can then get certified forever. I think I have 99 years, so I can
Couple more
still
years
teach.
left, Pat.
I don't think I'm gonna make it though. But that's why I always vote against them. That's my personal opinion, and you know, I think we degrade the profession when we and I know that what they say is, oh, we can't find them, but I would just hope that Christine keeps on prompting.
I will.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for explaining that.
All right.
That's a really principled stance to take, and I appreciate it.
Thank you.
So I just want to say, I can really respect what you're saying as a teacher. But a couple weeks ago, there was an article on the front page about the substitute shortage, teacher shortage, and substitute shortage. And what I saw happening, and I'm not sure how much it happens in Exeter, but on daily basis where I was working, would get called to do a coverage because they did not have subs in the building. Social workers would get called, anybody would get called. I got called for a life skills, and I do not have a special ed background, but you had to cover whatever class they called you to cover on your prep period. And so I think, you know, the guest teachers, you know, they have bachelor's degrees, and yeah, they don't have teaching certification, but people who don't have teaching certification that work in the building are also called to cover classes, and they're not even trained teachers. So I think that, you know, it's different now because of the substitute shortage. So I would rather see someone who's there all day with those students rather than teacher who gets called for period 2, someone else period 3, and so on. So that's why I'm supporting guest teachers.
Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
1 no. Motion carries.
Change status. It is recommended that the Board of School Directors approves or ratifies the following requests for change of status. Food service, support staff. That's it.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Leaves of absence. It is recommended that the Board of School Directors approves or ratifies the following leave of absence. Employee 1819005.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
It is recommended that the Board of School Directors approves the attached list of course requests.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries.
Staff conferences. It is recommended that the Board of School Directors approves the staff conferences listed below.
Second.
Any discussion?
Why are you looking at me?
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Trapino. Student functions, Mrs. Stratton.
It is reported that the following 6 field trips below have been approved within a 60-mile radius. I will not read all 6 of them. It is recommended that the Board of School Directors approves the following field trips beyond a 60-mile radius. The senior high marching band members are going to travel to Citizens Bank Park on September 17th to perform at the ballpark. Non-district transportation will be used for this trip. And the senior high cheerleaders will travel to Disney World for the cheerleading nationals on February 6, 2019 through February 11th, 2019 per the attached proposal.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
It is recommended that the Board of School Directors approves contract amendment number 1 to the agreement between Pediatric Services of America and the Exeter Township School District for the 2018-19 school year, approved May 14th, 2018, adding the services of certified school nurses at a cost of $55 per hour.
Second.
Any discussion?
This is just unrelated to the motion, but I was just wondering, Sue, if there was any follow-up on communicating with those parents with the 504s.
Yes, I have a letter in your folders that's going out tomorrow, and what Dr. Friesen and I decided, it's actually going to go out to all the parents, to update them on what's going on with nurses in the building, and then the specific families that Tammy, the CSN JV, has students with very high needs, they will also get that letter sent to them either via their emails or the mail, to make sure that you get it in the hands and don't trust their kiddos maybe when they do.
Thank you very much for that prompt response.
Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries.
It is recommended that the Board of School Directors approves contract agreement between Mifflin Counseling Group LLC and Exeter Township School District to provide DBS and social skills training to the Exeter Township School District for the 18-19 school year at a cost of $200 per 60-minute service hour.
Did I hear a second? Any discussion?
So this is on an as-needed basis.
Yes.
It's not just a continuous 8-hour day.
It could very well be that, but it's not.
It's not every, it's not every day.
Yeah, it's not every day.
Okay.
It's not every day.
But it's as needed, as you stated.
And is it generally listed in a student's IEP, or is it in a student's IEP or 504 plan?
It would be under the counseling component, that it's for our emotional support students who need counseling as part of their IEP, and this is a service that we're going to be using to address that counseling.
So it'll be as determined by the IEP team?
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Okay. Any further discussion?
Where is this Vista school? Is it Vista?
Oh, you're talking about
That's the next one.
That's the next one.
Oh, that's next. Oh.
Any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries.
It is recommended that the Board of School Directors approves the adoption of a settlement agreement and release to pay for one school year, I'm assuming that's what SY means, school year, 18-19, legitimate educational expenses not to exceed $30,000. And then 2, the next 4 subsequent school years tuition and transportation to the Vista School for student number 613189.
Second.
Any discussion?
Could I just get, I'm pretty sure I know what's happening in these situations, but could I just get a quick explanation, just to refresh my mind, about why these settlements occur?
Well, the short answer is, the family and the district cannot come to an agreement as to what the proper services are for the student. We feel that we can provide the right services. The families at this point don't. You sit at the table and you come to an agreement. That's the short answer. We can spend a lot more time getting into specifics at another time if you'd like.
I guess the other question I have is, why is it $30,000? Is this on the low side of the settlement agreement? Are there expenses that they're looking to incur that are greater than a public education? Because I thought that our spending per student was pretty significant, and I don't understand where they're going to go with $30,000.
This discussion should probably be, it's a confidential situation that you're getting into. This is a discussion that we can have with Dr. Miller offline.
We could schedule an executive
Yes,
session.
we can do that.
I'd just like to know where is the Vista school
In the Hershey area.
in the area? So the child will be transported back and forth every day then? And what's the cost of the transportation? Every
I
day?
don't know, because it's not set up yet.
Isn't
It's
that
for
in,
next year.
is
It's
this
for next year.
30,000 include the
No,
transportation?
the 30,000 is for the program they're doing this year. Vista School is the proposed plan for next year and the next.
Oh,
the
this
next
is
four
going for
subsequent
next
years.
year. Oh, I
So
see.
transportation is not set up, if the student is not going there this year, they have a different program this year, and then the following year is the Vista program.
Oh, I see.
I also want to add to that, I didn't realize on the next page is the exact same wording, so just adding to what I already stated, student number 614189. Sorry.
So can I also assume that by agreeing to these settlements, that we've sort of discharged our responsibility for faith, and that if the program itself is not effective, or if they fail to achieve their goals and objectives in the IEP, it's not the district's responsibility, it becomes that of the Vista School
That's all part of the agreement.
And parents
They
agree.
waived the
Agree to that. I understand that, you know, these can be very complicated placements, and they can, you know, students with both autism and behavioral issues can be very difficult and challenging to address. So I know we can't talk too much about the personal circumstances here, but, you know, obviously we've tried as a district to find ways to accommodate, and we haven't done that to the satisfaction of the parent.
Dr. Hamburger, did you say FAPE?
Free and appropriate public education,
Okay.
especially when it's one of alphabet soup.
It's a lot different than vape.
Yeah.
Was there an advocate involved?
Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries.
It is recommended that the Board of School Directors approves the agreement between Exeter Township School District and CCIU Brandywine Virtual Academy for the district-supported cyber school program. See the attached fee schedule.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Thank you, Ms. Stratton. The next section is the election of PSBA officers for 2019. Every school district that works with PSBA has a responsibility to cast votes, and these individuals have been nominated, and we have a nomination for president-elect. We have a vice president, a PA Eastern at-large representative. We have a PSBA Section 8 advisor, and 3 individuals for the trustee seats on the PSBA Insurance Trust Board. I think some of the information on these candidates was provided under separate cover to
Yes, I had
board members.
emailed all of the information that PSBA provided.
Right. So I move that we approve the slate of candidates for PSBA officers for 2019. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Dr. Hamburger, why do we have a responsibility to vote on these people?
Well, they represent us, I suppose, in some respects. I mean, as PSBA, part of the PSBA network, and I would imagine just about every one of the 500 schools is engaged with PSBA in some manner. This provides a way for our representation, and just like anything else, you vote for somebody who you feel could best represent your interests.
But this is a private organization. Shouldn't they handle their own board members?
I mean, you know, they're a private organization, but their absolute and total responsibility is to facilitate the needs of Pennsylvania school boards. I mean, so they are there, you know, for us, and that this is their way of ensuring that we have, I think, an opportunity to stay engaged, and we could have nominated someone from this board to be on, you know, the PSBA list of officers. It's an organization that provides us with a lot of guidance, a lot of direction, a lot of resources. But in much the same way that the Berks County IU, you know, provides us with the kind of resources that we might find difficult doing if we had to do it independently. So they service 500 school districts throughout the state. They have a big job, you know, and you know, I think I personally, I feel that it's an excellent organization to give us the guidance that we need to be effective in what we do.
I had a question just about how they got the names. You're saying that they were they were nominated by their school boards, or?
These are,
Because we're being asked to approve
Nominated
these
by the
particular
organization.
people, so.
Probably.
yeah, I think these came up through the organization. These are, I think they're,
You run for the, I mean, you
So-
nominate yourself, so to speak.
Okay, and then these names were selected by someone, by the committee or something?
Well,
It also appears that they were only the ones selected, so
Okay, so
nobody else
anybody,
probably ran it.
all right, so anyone who wanted to run, these are all their names that are here?
Yes.
Okay.
you know, I will say that in the past, it seemed to me we had more selection, and we could decide on others. These were the only ones that were really presented, you know, as candidates. I mean, were there any others, Ann, that you saw that, I mean, we didn't pick through these. I
We
mean,
didn't
these-
select.
No,
we
it's
didn't-
directly from the information from PSBA. I mean, it's part of their policy, 108 procedures for local boards to elect them.
They're the ones that applied for the job.
I know they also have a nominating committee. I'm sorry, I'm like crying here because I was just joking, but they have a nominating committee that
Take a minute.
yeah, all the officers are nominated from this nominating committee, which is made up of board members from across PA, and they are like selected. Thank you. They are selected through these elections, and then at, I think, state conference, we also have decisions about who gets placed on the nominating committee as well.
Yeah, I think you're gonna see these folks in action at the PSBA conference in Hershey in October.
I don't know why this isn't working. It isn't working, but don't we have like in June or something we can nominate, we can say, you know, like Mr. Tapino wants to get on this committee, and don't they, like, you can nominate people to go on there, I think, and I think that's how they do it. I think it's in June that if we want representatives, we can do that, I think. And then you would have maybe more than just one person, like most of these are just one person running.
So what you're saying is be careful what you ask for.
We can get you next year, make them in June's the time.
I'm busy that day.
I think one of the things we can do is we can submit recommendations to the platform. And that's what's going to be voted on again at the conference. You know, we could actually send a representative there and have them articulate a particular recommended change to the current PSBA platform. And those delegates who will be there this time will actually hear every one of those presentations, and they'll all be voted on separately.
Yeah, I know that.
Yeah. Any further discussion? All in favor of the slate of candidates for PSBA officers for 2019, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Can you register an abstention for me?
We have one abstention. And motion carries. So we'll move on to our board reports, and we'll start off with the athletic committee. Mr. Aarons.
So far this season, our athletics have been doing pretty well. Field hockey is off to an undefeated start, 7-0. We defeated the school district that shall not be mentioned this past Friday, 2-1, and they were undefeated at the time. So Exeter is really in a commanding position across the county. Girls volleyball is also on an undefeated season so far. They're playing this evening actually against Reading. Girls soccer is 6-2. They have a game this evening too as well at Twin Valley. Girls cross country is off to a 6-0 start, and they will be, I think they have a meeting they have a meet this evening at Schuylkill Valley, and then we'll also have the inaugural, I guess, football game for the fall at the Reading Phillies Stadium this Thursday against Muhlenberg. And other than that, we have been building, Tom and I have been building an agenda for the next athletics committee meeting. We're expecting that that'll be in November. Some of the topics that we're going to be looking at are our responsibility if any, regarding booster clubs. I think that there was also one that was brought up recently about people who do not pay admission to events in our stadium outside of the stadium on that hill next to the junior high, and maybe some thoughts about wanting to crack the whip a little bit on,
come on.
the freeloaders.
Come on.
No. There's a guy that is actually asking the school district, the guy
Yeah.
in the public who wants the school district to charge for people who are, watching the games from outside the stadiums, and so they're, theft by visualization, I guess.
Well,
Let's trump it up and build a wall.
I think one of the biggest concerns we have though with that area is the way they park. They don't park sideways, they park nose in, and it's a real hazard. So I know that's one of the things that's going to be discussed as well. How do we handle the parking, because it is a hazard when you come around that turn. It is unsafe.
So it'll all be a discussion point, and if there's any facilities issues that need to be brought up with the athletics committee, we'll pass it right over to you guys. Have a lot of fun. But I think it's going to be an issue that we're going to talk about. And then the other issue that we have building so far is talking about a committee structure. That's been on the chopping block for a little bit, and then past that, if anything else that I get, I'll share with you guys, and you guys will all get invitations directly, individually, for Jim's request, to make sure that everybody can know that something's coming around.
Unlike Pat and her technology committee.
Yeah.
What?
I'm kidding.
Thank you, Mr. Aarons. Curriculum Committee, Mrs. Hacker's not here this evening. I'm sure everyone's aware that she had her baby, and both mom and baby are doing well. But this evening, I think Dr. Winters will probably give us the report on the curriculum committee.
Sure. So curriculum committee met last week at 6 o'clock. I don't need it.
They need it for the lazy.
I like to think I'm loud enough already. There we go. Curriculum committee met last week at 6.
Can you bring it down a little? You're a little loud.
Anything else?
You have nowhere to go? Curriculum committee, take 3. The curriculum committee met last week at 6. I made a copy of the minutes and set them at your folders prior to the meeting this evening, so you can read them in more detail at your leisure, but just to hit on some of the highlights. The October curriculum committee meeting is being moved to before the voting meeting on the 16th. Since the 9th we won't be here, we'll be at BCTC for our workshop meeting. So because of that, just pointing out that the curriculum committee meeting will be on the 16th. As far as our agenda items that evening, we talked a little bit about the MOA and the posting for the senior high semester 1 virtual program responsibilities. That was approved last week in the special voting session, which we appreciate very much. The posting comes down tomorrow, and then myself and Mr. Campbell will start the interview process and make a recommendation to Dr. Phillips. We talked a little bit about the October 8th in-service day. The theme this year is differentiation. We're really differentiating across the board. Administrators are going to be doing intruder training here, as was previously mentioned. The specialists, the related arts teachers, are going to be doing job-alike countywide PD throughout Berks County at different locations. Core subject teachers will be here, focusing on data and differentiation and how it relates to best instructional practices. And we even have the whole design of the sessions that day such that there's some stuff that's hands-on, some stuff that's visual, so we're practicing what we are emphasizing. We discussed also at the meeting about department chairs. A real focus area for me this year is looking at our department chairs, the job description, the expectations, how we evaluate them. We had our first curriculum council meeting of the year yesterday. Dr. Phillips was there, and he can tell you that I was very direct and very transparent with the department chairs that, a lot is spelled out in those job descriptions, and that there's an expectation this year that department chairs are going to meet those standards. And I think the response was very positive. And then lastly, Julie Klein talked a little bit about text-dependent analysis and text-dependent questions and some of the work that was done over the summer in literacy to really look at how we're supporting writing and how we're preparing kids for text-dependent analysis. Pennsylvania is the only state that has to do that on their PSSAs. It's a pretty higher level of thinking, and if you talk to anybody that was at the curriculum committee meeting last week, Julie printed out some sample TDA questions and wrote the grade level on the back, and people were kind of floored at like just what students have to do in 4th grade, in 5th grade, you know, on up the spectrum. So that concludes my report. Any questions?
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Withers.
Yep.
Facilities Committee, Mr. Brady gave his committee report last Tuesday. Rob, if there's anything else that you feel that you want to share with us this evening, feel free.
I'm going to touch a little bit more on the issues in the buildings in my report.
Okay. All right, great. Personnel Committee, Mr. Japin.
Nothing to report.
Thank you. Policy Committee. Policy Committee does not meet regularly, but we continue to be very active in just examining new policies. 6 more new policies will be generated tomorrow for your, you know, for your continued review. For your pleasure. Technology Committee, Mrs. Page.
No report.
No report. Okay, thank you. Exeter Community Ed Foundation, Mrs. Hacker's not here. Anyone? Mrs. Stratton?
I had the pleasure of going to my first meeting in Jasmine's place last night. I've been there before, but that was the first time I got to be there as the representative from the board. And Amy Lutz had sent me 2 things that she wanted me to mention. The first one was that the ECEF was informed on August 27th that our $50,000 grant application to the Berks County Community Foundation's Med-Ed Endowment Sustainable Energy Fund in support of Exeter's LED conversion project was not selected. She wanted to send special thanks to Rob Grazuli and Dr. Winters for their help with the grant application, and wanted to mention that Exeter was one of 8 finalists in this statewide grant. So good effort, but didn't get that, unfortunately. And then also that $1,600 has been donated to the Exeter Township School District. This money represents $1,400, which is going towards the digital socialization presentation, which is on September 27th for parents and then September 28th for the students. It's going to be at the junior high. And $200 went for calculators, and I hope I'm saying this correctly, for Miss Corey Weir's high school math class. Thank goodness, I hate saying names wrong. And then she wanted to thank the donors of these special projects.
Great. Thanks, Ms. Stratton. Thanks for filling in. Berks Career and Tech Center Joint Operating Committee, Dr. McClendon.
So we met August 22nd. They had students there who had students and their parents there to acknowledge them. They competed in the national competition. It was in June and held in Dallas. And we had several students who participated, but we had one student who was there that night, Matthew Ward, and he won 4th place in the HOSA. That's the Health Occupation Students of America group. So I wanted to acknowledge him. They're still working on getting the veterinarian program. They're waiting to hear back from RAC. So hopefully that is up and running for next school year. And they're going to be, they were thinking about either renovating and expanding the welding building or building a new one, so they have decided to build a new building. And they're going to get their money from the Capital Fund Reserve, so they do not expect to float a bond or to ask the school districts to help pay for that. So the welding program is really, they said they had to turn away 16 students, so they really, there's a big need, for welders. And that's also a program where they generate revenue by having, they said they can sell 5 to 10 seats, like for adult continuing ed in the program, so that would generate revenue. Let me see what else. Well, Dr. Winters mentioned, and you got an email too, we finally got the, date to go there for our, I'm looking at you, Hunter, yeah.
Hunter, calm down. He's gonna jump across the table with you.
I'm gonna
For
go
the
there.
board workshop October 9th.
It's the East Campus.
Yes, at East Campus, so.
That means old.
Mhm. So I think that was it, other than what you got in, you got the joint operating committee meeting brief, so there's information in there.
I'm gonna talk a little bit more, because I was at the PAC meeting today, which is the
Okay.
Professional Advisory Committee, I sit on that board. But also, it's, we'll have more specifics for the October 9th. About if they're gonna tour us and things like that.
And they're gonna feed us, right?
I'm sorry?
They're gonna feed us, right?
Yes, they will feed us as well.
Thanks, Dr. McLeod. VCU Board of Directors, next meeting for the Board of Directors is this Thursday evening. One of the, probably the biggest piece of information we've heard recently from BCIU is that Carl Blessing, who is the CFO for BCIU, has announced his retirement. Carl is Joe Hackman's right-hand man. I mean, he's right there in virtually every initiative that she and the board tries to promote. So that's going to be a big loss for BCIU, and they'll be spending half of the year just trying to find a way to replace Carl. He's been there for probably 30 years with BCIU. So that meeting is, as I said, Thursday evening. Legislative Liaison, Mr. Gilmore.
I have nothing, sir.
Thank you. Township and Borough Liaison, Mr. Chapin.
Yes, I have tried to connect with Lisa from the Township, but she's not responding. So last time I blamed it on myself. This time I'm blaming it on her. I have nothing to report on St. Lawrence.
It's still your fault.
I mean, I'll take responsibility, but at least I tried this time. I didn't try the last time.
Okay, thank you.
So what are you trying to do, Mr. Chapina?
I think just to maintain a relationship with the township as we potentially address issues in the future on matters where our interests intersect. I don't have anything in particular.
I also, and I'm not pointing at Mike for this, but I had asked at one point, and I think the supervisors, and I can't recall if this was in a meeting, although I'm pretty sure if I say anything in a meeting, it's probably something worth listening to. The comment was about them giving us some of their perception about economic development in the township, because they've been doing a lot of work on that. And I think that we're really missing out without knowing the whole picture of what our community looks like if they're not willing to communicate. And I really think that we should figure out some way to establish some type of communication. And if the best way to do that would be to go to one of their meetings and ask them to communicate with us like they often have done to us, I wouldn't be opposed to that.
Are you volunteering to attend one of their meetings?
Voluntold Mike. Voluntelling Mike.
I think we have a reporter here today from the Reading Eagle, so if that could be your headline, perhaps we'll get attention in that manner. But understood, and I agree with you, and I will redouble my efforts.
Yeah.
Okay. Next section, payment requests. Mrs. Page.
Mine, I think you have this turned off or something. It's not working.
Would you broke it?
They're worried about what you might say.
Everybody else is working with you, Pat.
It was working, it was working.
I don't pull it out and shit will happen.
No, no.
You can talk for
Okay,
yourself.
That'll pick you up.
I can just say, there, oh, there it
Just
is.
keep going. The things are picking you up.
Yeah, okay. We have total list of payments from the general fund of $3,938,147.99, and from the capital reserve, $1,119,261.84. I move that we pay our bills, and that would be it.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Before we get to the superintendent's report, if you don't mind, Dr. Phillips, I just wanted to kind of just give folks a quick update on the ad hoc transportation committee. We are planning our next phase of activities, and our next meeting will probably be sometime within the next 2, 3, 4 weeks, where we're inviting some potential contractors to come in and talk to us a little bit about what it is to contract for transportation services. What does it look like? What are the conditions that are normally included in a contract with school districts? We have not made a decision. Obviously, we haven't made a recommendation yet for how we're going to proceed, but we're, again, trying to get as much information as we possibly can about every potential direction we could go in, and one of those is actually having these discussions with contractors, and that will be an open meeting. There will also be an opportunity for our committee to travel to Upper Moreland School District to take a look at their busing program that uses alternative fuel as opposed to the diesel we use. They use a propane fuel source, and that's very interesting to some members of our community because of its obviously the environmental impact, and there are, I think, long-term some economic benefits as well, including, you know, the relief of some maintenance activities, relief costs in terms of associated with repairing the vehicles, and I mean, obviously, propane is a fuel that has fewer emissions and the type of fossil fuel that we're concerned about in terms of its impact on the environment. So that's kind of coming up for the ad hoc committee. All board members are invited to come, but we'll continue with our process. We do have a goal of trying to come up with a recommendation for how we want to handle transportation in January of 2019.
Dr. Bruce, do you have the date? Did you give a date on when that meeting with the contractors is going to be?
No, it'll be on Monday, but we're still working out the dates with the committee members and the contractors.
So then you let us know.
Yeah, and we'll yeah.
And the same thing with the one visit to the school district?
Yeah, I'm assuming anybody can go if they.
You don't have dates though?
We don't have dates for that yet. So. And Mrs. Guy is just helping us make arrangements with.
That's just a
Yeah. We're making. I'm guessing it would be either in the afternoon or an evening meeting for the trip to.
Upper Moreland, because it would have to be between 9 a.m. and 2 p.m. or after 4 p.m.
After hours. So that's all for the transportation.
That's in-house, isn't it, Ann?
Their program,
Yeah, they
yes.
have that in-house. Well, I do think, we see what is happening down in, is it North Carolina or South Carolina with all the rain and everything, and the hurricane, and I think we as a district need to reduce our carbon footprint. And I would like maybe when we have our retreat, that we put that on the agenda as to how we can reduce our carbon footprint here in Exeter, to show, the population that it is very important, because otherwise, things are going to be haywire, and the climate people who study this is saying that it's getting to the point where
There's no carbon, there's no climate change.
well, that's what some people say, but the climate scientists say differently. So I would hope that we will put that on our agenda for when we have our board retreat.
Well, that agenda's getting longer and longer.
Well, that's a very important issue.
Yeah. Well, and keep in mind that we also had some discussions with RER Energy Group in terms of looking at solar power. And that's another way that the school districts, think about every school district in Pennsylvania converted to solar power, how much that would relieve, you know, our region of dependence on what is mainly, you know, coal-generated electricity.
And did you ever find out about that 40 million that they had, I guess, from the tobacco, you know, settlement that they had in Pennsylvania? Are they going to do anything as far as, say, helping, like school district get fleets, or at least get a number of, say,
I spoke to, and I don't remember his last name, actually his email, Tony. His name was listed in the presentation that was given by Jennifer Goldstein of New Roads Energy, or Roads Energy, not New Roads. And he explained some things. I mean, you can use it to buy propane. But I asked him, I said, well, what would a school district like us do? We don't have a site for fueling. And he says, well, you could wet fuel, and we all heard that. So he said a lot of school districts will start out slow, buying, you know, a few at a time, and gradually replace. But we would have to wet fuel. I mean, our situation is we don't have a fueling fueling station. We're at a crossroads. What are we going to do? So if we wanted to entertain any propane, could do it gradually and apply for some funds. I mean, I'll talk to him again. It's hard to have a conversation about moving in such a dramatic direction, even though it's probably a good direction, when we don't know what we're doing with our facility. To me, that's the long and short of it.
I think I remember one of the people saying, or I read it somewhere, that a lot of times if we don't have like a fueling station that we have right here, like we do for the diesel, that they could come by, I don't know, and bring something or bring it to us.
Right, they would
Yeah.
wet fuel. They bring
Yeah.
a tanker truck, and you know, fuel the buses, the propane buses.
Well, maybe that's something, Mr. Trapino, you could talk to the township. They have lots of land, and they might, you know, give us some for that purpose.
Put it on my list.
He is getting her to return a phone call, right?
I'll get more information from him, because it actually expires in December, but I don't think it's going away. I think the funds for this initiative will continue.
I mean, if we can get money from the state, I mean, they have the 40 million, so we can get money from the state to, from what I understand, there are districts that are slowly changing over. They're buying X number of, you know,
And what they'll fund is the
buses.
difference between the cost of diesel bus and the cost of propane bus. So that incremental amount is what they'll fund.
Well, thank you, Ed.
Just, may I ask a question related to the next bus discussion? Are we inviting companies in, and is there a formal request for information, not proposal, but are they making a uniform presentation, or are they just coming in and saying, this is what we do?
I think our plan right now, Mike, is for just a general discussion. We'll ask questions, they'll give us descriptions of how they typically work with school districts, how things work when they make that conversion between a district operated program and a contracted program, and what are some of the considerations, what do you think about? For instance, what happens to the fleet? Is the fleet purchased by the contractor? Are there property acquisition from the contractor? What is their expectation for property and parking? What are some of the typical provisions that they provide for employees to kind of make sure that, the employees aren't hurt, in the process, recognizing there will be differences like PSERS, and other maybe loss of certain benefits that would happen as a result of a transfer. So we want to know as much as we can going into it.
I'll wait till we have that discussion. Because, the question I have aren't answerable until, I think you're following a good process, and I think it's appropriate to have that discussion. I know this is not a formal RFP and no decisions been made. You're still in information gathering stage.
Yeah, and this is not to suggest that contracting is the direction we're going. It's simply doing part of our research, yeah, to understand, how this all works.
Dave, real quick, along with that discussion, have you considered moving the meeting location to a larger facility to accommodate more of an audience? Because I imagine that for that discussion, it might draw more of a crowd.
No, we haven't. We can think about it, but we haven't thought about that yet.
I would just encourage you to think about it, because I think, I recently, I think last season, the township had a similar instance where they had chosen a meeting location that didn't accommodate the crowd, and I think we should just be prepared for this.
Yeah, we typically
Oh,
get
the
bus
ambulance
drivers
thing.
who come out.
I was thinking Reading Country Club, but yeah.
The group that comes out are typically the bus drivers, and they can be accommodated in the PD room. Okay, we'll move on to Superintendent's report, Dr. Phillips.
Thank you, Dr. Hemberger. Excuse me, as usual, we have some great news. This morning, Mr. Tim DeWalt informed me that two Rifton School students were selected as winners in the 2018 Pennsylvania Department of Transportation's PennDOT Annual School Bus Contest. Their work was completed last school year and was sent off mid-June. First place in grades 3 to 5 was Olivia Spitz. Second place, grades 3 to 5, was Sawi Nguyen. They have been invited to the award ceremony in the governor's residence in Harrisburg on Monday, October 22nd. Again, I referenced the Berks Career and Technical Center Professional Advisory Committee, which I sit on. This morning we had a meeting, and we were informed that they are celebrating their 50th anniversary of BCTC. So the students have created some very nice banners that are hanging outside the buildings and so forth. I also talked to Dr. Kraft, and he informed me that again on October 9th, we will be touring the East Campus building, as well as getting a tour of their house project. They're building a house right now, so we will get to go through that house and have that tour as well. He touched on some other items that I'm going to speak about. One of them was they are in a 2-year planning phase for a virtual field trip for elementary students. It's a little difficult just logistically to get elementary students to come out into the BCTCs, but they do see some relevance in having them students at that age getting to see what's going on in the buildings. So they have purchased some 360-degree cameras, and they will be doing virtual field trips for elementary students, and it's all through grants. Again, at the meeting, one of the highlights was Governor Wolf's PA SMART promotion of pre-apprenticeships and apprenticeships. There was a conference that they will be attending. It's a program similar to dual enrollment. When they're in the pre-apprenticeship program, they can receive an apprenticeship while completing an associate's degree at the same time. We talked a little bit about assessment data. Dr. Kraft highlighted their assessment data and made the following statements or announcements. When it comes to the NOCTI test, which is the test that they are given for proficiency, they are above the state average scoring wise. In the PA skills testing, BCTC has received a distinguished status, which is if you score at the 75 percentile or higher. They've received that score of distinguished for the last 5 years. When it comes to industry cert testing, they have utilized their Perkins funding for students, so they do not have to pay for their first certification test. So they eliminated that barrier for all students to be able to sit for their certifications. Their attendance scores are in the 95 or higher grades. We were at 92%, so I'll be talking to Mr. Campbell about that. We're a little low. We discussed the 2018-2019 school improvement plan. What their improvement plan is basically their goals and what they want to have for this upcoming school year. One of the issues was the welding lab that they're going to be building. They're going to be doing that through grants, as Dr. McClendon talked about, and they'll also be receiving $500,000 from the adult ed program to help fund with that as well.
they bring in revenue.
They bring in quite a bit of revenue.
With their CDC too.
They talked about, they reviewed a work-based learning summary. And with that, there was a philanthropic person in the area who has donated quite a bit of funding, and their co-op program, when the students work in their co-op field in the summer, this person gives each co-op student a $1,200 stipend for the work that's done over the summer. They wish to remain anonymous, but that he's also, or he or she is also working to bring in 2 more persons to help fund the program, because I believe there was a shortage of about 36 students that weren't allowed into the co-op program. So wanting to fund all those students for that purpose. There was a couple of programs that we talked about as far as facility changes and future programs. There have been low enrollment in the area of graphic arts and printing and auto tech, and they're looking to do some things creatively to give the students the access to those programs without having to or be creative with staffing, I guess would be the way to say that. Their SMART program, which is their student medicine and rehabilitation therapy program, and their MHP program. I'm not too quite sure, he didn't mention that one, but those are 2 programs that are higher enrollments, and they'll be adding sessions to that. And they're looking to merge an agricultural science and the BCTC horticulture program. That'll be a 1-year program that students will be able to take advantage of that would blend agricultural science into their horticultural program. They're looking to research an offering of a senior-only heavy equipment operator certificate. So students, there is a construction company that has continually asked for students who are able to handle heavy equipment. So they have some donations of training programs where they can work on a trainer and not necessarily actually on a bulldozer, but they're looking to purchase some of the heavy equipment. Their problem right now is finding land that they can use. The Lancaster BCTC has over 100-acre plot, and they're out there pushing dirt basically on a daily basis. We don't have that option, so they're looking to see what they can do with that. They're also looking to open, or considering to open, a veterinary science and a web design program. That is my report for tonight.
Thanks, Dr. Phillips. At this time, Laura, are there any board members who would like to be heard on any topic?
Dr. Phillips, you mentioned that you were going to say something about the buildings.
No, I can certainly do that, sure. Okay, I just wanted to reiterate, I know I've sent out quite a bit of information to not only the parents of the junior high, but also the board and the staff. We are continually testing and cleaning rooms that have a need. At this point, Burke's Fire and Water was in over the weekend to clean an assortment of rooms. They'll be retesting tomorrow. Other areas that require additional work, Burke's Fire and Water will be handling that as well. We've been working with Spot Stevens and McCoy, which is our industrial hygienist. They're the ones doing the testing of the rooms. What I had asked of the facilities group was to speak to Spot Stevens and McCoy and ask their professional opinion. Basically, if we're heading in the right direction, are we doing what we need to do? They suggest we continue sampling and remediating as needed. Their comment was some of the rooms are only slightly elevated. This can occur because of normal usage, and sampling has shown normal fungal activity. We have gone to clean those rooms anyway, and also to try and move the students out of the room. But the suggestion from the group is to continue to address the situations that they are discovered at this time. The facilities group, maintenance and custodial staff continue to clean with HEPA vacuums and perform their normal cleaning routines throughout the school. They commended us for using an outside contractor, which is Burke's Fire and Water, to address any elevated situations. They felt it was a good idea since this work is consistent, and they also can be held responsible for any missed items. So at this point, we're continuing the process in phases as needed.
Thank you.
Any other comments or requests for comments from board members? Seeing none, I will accept a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
You're adjourned, thank you.